down the pipeline, whether that is a Google algorithm change, whether it is AI, whether it is a new shoppable feature on a social media channel, whether it's a commission rate change with a specific brand. Things are always changing, and you have to kind of pivot your strategy.
Hello, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Hanan. I'm the co-founder of Trackonomics, and I head the Publisher Technology Group at Impact, which is the group of companies that build solutions and services for publishers. And I'm here with an amazing panel of commerce content innovators and OGs, I have to say. Introduce yourself. Let's start with you.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Emily Jackson. I'm the SVP of eCommerce at Forbes, which essentially means that I oversee 3 core businesses. The first is Forbes Vetted, which is our affiliate content business. The second is Forbes Coupons, and then the third is the Forbes Store. So if you guys want any branded Forbes swag, you know where to go.
Nice. My name is Lloyd. I'm the general manager of Reviewed, which is USA Today's consumer product reviews site. And I also am the VP of Commerce Content, so that means basically I oversee all commerce content and affiliate across the entire USA Today network. And I've been doing that for just over 10 years now, which is definitely OG.
OG.
I am Jen Birkhofer. I am the VP of Commerce for the NBC News Group. So that encompasses Today Show, broadcast and digital, and then NBC News Select and CNBC Select. It's our personal finance brand.
Amazing. Thank you all for being here. Let's jump right into the first topic and this first amazing graph. For those of you who haven't seen it, that little huge peak right there, that's COVID. And then there's this incredible statistic that in the first 6 months of lockdown, more e-commerce businesses were created than in the previous 10 years. And well, that's clearly reflected in this graph. But now we are, I think, clearly in the post-COVID era, and things are resuming to some sort of normality, I guess. And it's been a hell of a couple of years, I suppose, for all of you and your businesses. How are you all kind of settling to this new normal? Let's start with Emily.
Yes. So we were in a unique position where, Forbes Vetted really launched properly at the beginning of 2020. So we kind of had this rocket ship through COVID, and we're still very much in high growth mode. And I think for us, there are kind of 2 challenges in the way that we've changed our business, since starting. And the first is really, one of the biggest challenges is how quickly can we hire people? Like I said, still very much in high growth mode, looking to bring on as many people as possible. And one of the things that we have changed, and this really was set at the very beginning of the pandemic, is that now we bring people on fully remote. Forbes did a great job kind of at the very beginning of the pandemic, setting the expectation that people could work remotely if they wanted, they could do hybrid if they wanted, they could work in the office. And so for us, it really means that we've been able to hire more, better talent across the entire country. It also means that we've been able to retain talent a little bit more efficiently. So that's really worked out well for us. I think the second thing is diversification outside of organic search. It is a massive challenge for most publishers. We are definitely in that bucket. For us, what we've had to change is really spearhead growth within our audience development team. So that means making sure that that is way more robust. It means making sure that we are launching new newsletters, that we are thinking about social, that we're launching, social videos, that we have an SMS and a push strategy. But with that, it also means that knowing that the traffic that is going to come in outside of organic search is not going to be nearly as valuable as those people who are coming in via search. Search people are bottom of the funnel, they are high intent, they are high converting, and we just don't see the same metrics with
so it is still very much a search-driven business, isn't it?
But it's you have a lot of eggs in one basket with that,
of course.
And that's a massive challenge.
What about you, Chris?
Very similar to Emily. I think I spent the last 2.5 years in constant recruiting, hiring, training mode, and we've sort of slowed that down quite a bit, and just we're sort of normalizing and getting more efficiencies in the business. Diversifying our revenue is super important. We're very heavy on search, like 75, 80% of our audience. And depending on who you talk to over the last couple of weeks, there's some real doomsday scenarios that people are throwing around. I don't think it's going to be quite that bad, at least in the immediate future. So we're really looking at how do we diversify our audience? How do we diversify our revenue streams? We're doing a lot more brand deals than we've ever done in the past.
Interesting.
I have a really great biz dev team that's probably sitting out here someplace that are just this constant pipeline of new opportunities. So yeah, I think just trying to find different ways to hedge against whatever change is coming, because
changes are coming.
The last 3 years have been a really interesting decade, and who knows what's going to happen over the next couple of years with generative AI and what Google's going to end up doing. So I think we just got to have a strong first-party data strategy, diversified audience, and obviously as many revenue streams as we can create.
Jane?
Same here. We've had a very strong 3 years. Shop Today has grown 209% over the past 3 years, which is fantastic, and we've continued to grow. We luckily, unlike other publishers, have the arm of broadcast to help us. But digitally, we are really focused on, as they said, diversification of traffic. We have a pretty robust SMS strategy now. We're launching new newsletters. We're very deep into social, desktop notifications, things like that. Also, just diversification of technology. So how can we make sure that our pages are as optimized as possible, they're as efficient as possible, they give the reader what they need in order to make a decision and make a purchase, whether that's tools or better research, things like that. And I think, the last thing is just diversification of strategy. So if we're not going to rely on search, how can we partner with brands or vendors or tech companies in different ways to drive revenue? So I think diversification has definitely been the name of the game.
Yeah, but it's not yet a TikTok-fueled business, is it? It's all it's very search traffic.
Yeah.
Very dependent on sort of Google and SEO and that to get that quality traffic.
Well, the other thing too is if you can't just do a one-to-one trade-off, right? I'm trading this page view from search for a page view from email, let's say, because it's not going to convert the same way that it does. So you've got to play that balance with what the RPMs look like by source.
Well, I've often said actually that one of the reasons why I think commerce content is so amazing and has such incredible conversions for brand is because to use like a whiskey analogy or something, but it's double distilled, because users go into Google and then they search and then all your website come up, and so there's already the initial intent is there through search, and then once they're on the site with the content, you validate and you get a secondary intent. And that's that kind of double distillation thing. So by the time the brand gets to user, that user has intent, they've also done the research, they've got all the kind of information they need to make the purchase. And I think that's kind of how it translates to such incredible businesses, really.
Yeah, we've had brands tell us that we convert 3 to 4 or 5x versus what they, if they were just buying traffic or driving traffic directly to the page. They need that intermediary to sort of confirm what the reader's looking at.
Yeah, it's amazing. I want to talk about decision making, or it's the kind of mechanics of commerce content for you guys. So actually, I think Emily, when you and I first met, you were still at Condé Nast.
Yeah.
That was some time ago, and I remember talking to Jackie, who was a co-worker of yours back then, and she telling me that at the time they were getting, I think, something like 600 or 700 partnership requests a week, from brands saying, "Hey, can you mention me? Can I be included?" And I had no idea it was so big for commerce content publishers. Really can't remember being blown away by that number. And I think I have no reason to suspect that number has waned. I mean, if anything, as people kind of know more about it, they want it more. But what kind of things are you guys considering when you're looking at brands and deciding whether or not they're going to get included, they're going to get mentioned, et cetera? Let's start with you, Jen.
So we have brands coming to us a lot. Can you put us on the Today Show? The answer is almost always no. But for us, commission rates do not matter. You can come and say, I will give you 100%, I will give you all the money. And that we are editorially led. Everything starts with our editors. We let our audience choose like what we're allowed to write about, what we're allowed to put on the show. They tell us what brands they're interested in, what price points, what types of products. So coming to me, who's on the business end with a high commission rate sounds great, but if you're not a good fit for our audience and our for our audience or for the show, it's just I can't go to our editorial team and say, hey, put this in an article. Like they will just tell me no. For us, it's about why are you a good fit for our audience? What are you bringing to our brand? What stats do you have? We're a news organization. How can we use data to kind of appeal to our editors and encourage them to put your products or write about your products? So it's not about commission rate. I think it's the main thing.
What about you, Chris?
Yep, we're also very editorial led. All of our partnerships have to be blessed by editorial first, but the first thing I would tell anyone is make a great product, make a great service.
Or try to.
It's very easy for us, I'm sure Jen and Emily are in the same boat, it's very easy for us to go to editorial and say this great product wants to do a sponsorship, and they jump at the chance, right? Again, I think the commission rate is a great point. It's like you can be 100% commission rate, but if you don't convert, there's no point. Yeah. I mean, what does your EPC look like? That's those sorts of things you can start, getting the conversation going. But a commission rate's really meaningless without some context.
Yeah, I mean, very, very similar. We have, brands that will come to us a lot and say, hey, we see you did this article on the best chef's knives. We'd really like to be included, and there is no way to be included unless you came out at the top of our testing project, where we spent thousands of hours testing different chef's knives. So there is really no way to get included in that content unless you truly are the best product. And to what Jen and Chris said, it doesn't matter what your commission rate is or even what your performance metrics are. We have to make sure that the recommendations that we're giving to our readers are truly the best, because that is how we set the level of trust that we need with our readers in order to scale this business. So nothing is more important than that.
Not worth your reputation, not worth sacrificing any kind of revenue for the lacking in authenticity.
Exactly.
Or recommending something that you think isn't aligned with your readership and what they would want to see.
100%.
Yeah, I mean,
our readers know too, by the way. They have very good meters to know when we're full of it.
And people people are smart, right? People are not stupid. They go online. They can I think sense when things are inauthentic. I never buy anything without reading reviews anymore. And I think we have seen plenty of research to suggest that the average consumer, I think, goes through 4 reviews of a product before actually making a purchase. So they go on all your 3 websites. And then the last one wins the click, which is a different problem that we need to talk about separately. With click.
That's a different panel.
That's the attribution. We haven't attributed now. But I think the authenticity, I think, is what I'm hearing, and being consumer first in your decision making is where that is. But let's say, however, you do. What tips can you give brands though? So there's a good brand, there is alignment, but there's a long list of brands with a good alignment and that want to get on your sites. What tips can you give them still to sort of pitch you better? What do you think, Jen?
I mean, read my website or websites before you reach out to me. That's a big one. Know who you're pitching and what kinds of content that they write about. Craft your pitch specifically to the brand that you are talking to. Another thing, that we've used a lot is social media. So we have, people on our teams that are dedicated to looking at TikTok and finding new products for us to try, looking at Instagram and finding new products for us to try. So a big thing on our end is, what does your social media presence look like? How are you using social to get in front of, different influencers or different publishers? I think that's huge as well.
Yeah, very similar. We're going to look at, what does your social look like? What does the search volume, your branded search volume look like? Does anybody know who you are? I think that's, there needs to be some sort of triangulation of, a little bit of brand awareness along with it being a great product and easy to work with. I think the customize your pitch, I delete 200 emails a day, easy. Like it's just the spray and pray mentality.
Yeah, it's too much, yeah.
Like an sort of old school PR thing. It just doesn't work. You
Yeah.
know? But if you write, you know, I saw that my product was listed in this, and you know, you really customize it.
So it's like, think that they're applying for a job.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, customize your CV.
It's not
don't
spam
like
if
an
it's
email.
relevant,
Exactly.
right? It's not spam if it's relevant.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I will add is that we do have a lot of conversation with brands about how to optimize for link destination. So it's one thing that, you know, we don't tell our editors what to add in a specific article. We do optimize for link destination based on what is the lowest price and then what is the highest earnings per click. So if you are a brand who, you know, sells products that are also available elsewhere, like that is a conversation that we can have about like where it makes sense to kind of route that traffic. Again, it has to be consumer first, so the price has to be, you know, match or lower. And then, like I said, we're going to optimize based on earnings per click.
By the way, I did not know that you have social media scouts that are going and looking for
do.
products.
That's how,
cool.
I mean, I shop through our Slack channels now. I don't have to go anywhere else.
That's good to know. I've learned things every day. So some of you though have other options like your sponsored content, brand inclusions. Chris, I don't think you guys do that, right?
No, not quite sponsored content. No.
But you guys do. How does it work at Forbes for paid inclusions and sponsored content and that stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, it sounds pretty counterintuitive to say brands can't pay their way into editorial, but we do have this paid program, you know, suite that you can buy into. But I think for us, it's been very, very efficient in being able to hold the line between, you know, editorial and business. So the paid programs that we offer, whether that is a native ad in an existing content or it is, you know, a dedicated piece of content or a dedicated newsletter, that is completely handled by our partnerships team. So, you know, it doesn't have any overlap with the editorial team. And what we were finding is that, you know, so many brands were coming to us and saying, you know, we want to get our products in front of your audience. And we were saying, there's no way for you to be able to pay your way in. You know, here is a way that you can still get your products in front of our audience in a way that it makes it, you know, very easy for the user to understand that this was not editorially chosen, that this is a paid placement that we are putting in front of you. You know,
the quality of the traffic is the same, right?
Yes.
So because it's still the same top of the funnel users that are getting through search, so the traffic is still excellent.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, that being said, we're pretty picky about who we work with because at the end of the day, we want brands to come away as happy campers at the end of a campaign. So if a brand comes to us and says, we want to do a piece of dedicated content, but we look back at the data and we say, you know, historically, we've had a really, really low conversion rate with this brand, then we're going to go back to them and say, I don't think this is right because you're not going to see the ROAS that you're expecting from this. And so, you know, we've got better at doing that.
What about you guys, Jen?
Yeah, so we do a little bit. You know, all of ours, again, I sound like a broken record, but it's editorially led, audience led. So we don't partner with people that we haven't written about organically. And we do the same thing, Emily. We look at, you know, conversion rates and make sure that our audience is actually interested in this brand or this product. A big thing, you know, that we're focusing on now, and these ladies in the front row are focusing on now, is, you know, creating really editorially rooted programs with brands that like our audience is aligned with. So doing a few large deals with brands that really align with the Today Show. And not doing kind of just a scatter, like little deals with everybody. We're trying to, you know, figure out where we have editorial alignment, where we have franchises that certain brands can, you know, align with in a way that feels very seamless, and focusing on those. And then we work closely with our ad sales team. If you want to come in and do a piece of branded content, great, go to ad sales, because everything that we do is editorial first.
That was really interesting. So do you say sort of like doubling down on the big successful ones rather than sort of spreading yourself too thin on a lot of different...
We've seen it's too hard. You can't keep up. It doesn't drive good performance, I think, for anybody. It's better to do long-term deals where you optimize pivot over time to reach the brand's goals.
Yeah, primarily probably for the brands, right? Like to get the results that they want.
They have to be more patient too, right? You have to give it time because the quick hit stuff just doesn't convert as well as, you know, give it time to index and build some equity on search, and then you're going to get that high quality audience.
That's what CPC is for, the short-term stuff, right?
Exactly.
Have you all sort of experimented a little bit with, we've seen a lot more CPC models coming in this year. I've seen companies like Linkbee, I've seen companies like Narrative doing different kind of partnership models, which are interesting. Have you experimented with that a little bit?
Yeah, we're starting to do a ton of those.
Yeah.
Again, there's not a lot of patience on the brand side of things, because I think a lot of times those CPC budgets are actually coming from their search budget, not from their affiliate budget. So I think the mindset's a little bit different, but I think it'll just take some time to get people to sort of get the economics of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for our more like lifestyle brands, we don't, but CNBC Select, personal finance, CPC is a huge part of that space.
CPC.
And so we've figured out a way. We obviously get a lot of traffic from search on CNBC Select, and so we found a way to, kind of work CPCs in, on editorially chosen products. Again, broken record, but I'm not saying it. Because CPCs, can be very beneficial if you're used in the right way in the right places.
Yeah, same. I mean, I think we're a little bit more platform specific about where we use CPC, but definitely starting to see more of it. Yeah,
I mean, we're seeing it popping, and it's really interesting actually to see the evolution of these models, especially in the last year. See a lot more publishers sort of coming with CPA back with a minimum eCPC or kind of deals which ultimately fall into some sort of like an eCPC or RPM kind of metric and a lot of hybrid deals as well. So a lot of CPA plus CPC plus this plus that plus sponsored content, which to kind of diversify, I suppose, the deal. And with that in mind, when sort of thinking about publisher brand relationships, what other kind of new things or you guys are expecting or seeing at the moment directionally?
I personally think you've got two agencies, right? A brand has an affiliate agency and a media agency, and they're not talking the same language. But I think we're already starting to see it. This side, the media side's coming more towards affiliate, because I'm getting a lot of calls from the national sales team saying, hey, can we put affiliate in this deal?
Interesting.
And so I think the evolution of it is going to be this hybrid agency that's going in and saying, just like you said, we can do branded content, we can do traditional media, we can do lead gen, CPC, CPA. So I think that's sort of the direction. We've already done a couple pretty significant
with
deals.
Like the big agencies, like the sort of the ones that are,
I think that's where it's going. The big dogs, the ones
that's
that
really
look down on affiliate agencies. Those guys are going to start coming towards us.
I mean, I think our friend Lacey, right, from Seattle, is she here? I'm not sure. Recently got acquired by a much larger, I think, media group. We're starting to see that quite a lot happening as well. Anything to add to that, Emily or Jen?
Yeah, exactly the same. I think, a year ago, none of these teams talked to each other. And for the first time ever this year, I mean, we run fairly regular kind of editorially themed packages, Sleep Week or Best Summer Ever. And for the first time ever, we've actually been collaborating with our programmatic and our direct display teams to wrap in like an overall proposal for these brands. First time it's ever happened, and I can't tell you whether it's going to be successful, but we are.
I have questions about that. I will ask you about that, definitely.
We are definitely trying, and I think people are much more open to it.
Yeah, I think at this point, I talk more to our ad sales team than I do to our editorial team. They are constantly. We are like working in lockstep. The past couple years have been a lot of just us trying to figure it out. How can, especially when you talk about upfront budget, and there's so many things that come to being like a broadcast, linear, streaming, entity. And so we've now kind of worked out with our ad sales. We have very distinct swim lanes of what we do versus what they do and how we can complement each other. And so we see it as a complement. We are really, really good at driving revenue, driving orders, but we're not going to talk about your new store opening in New York. That's where they come in. So the partnership of, us writing commerce content and then them amplifying it, or them, pushing the PR message and us writing content to kind of surround that has worked really well. So we've netted out there, but it took a long time, and we're still working through it.
It is such a unique thing, though, like with NBC, to have the broadcast as your part. Is there any other publisher that has that, like that broadcast sort of?
Maybe a big competitor morning show of ours, but I don't know if they're in this room.
I can think of
No,
one now,
it's a very unique, broadcast has been very, very unique. And now as we look more to streaming, Peacock, there's so much. So it's kind of a constant Wild West.
Yeah. Super cool. This is a part that I really like about this little panel bounce, because this is when I ask you about your successful initiatives and about things that you've done within commerce content in the recent past, which were particularly successful, and essentially what can we learn from it? What can brands and publishers learn from that? Let's start with you, Jen.
All right, so top performing, this is top performing content formats, but one of my, if you've had any meetings with me, you've heard me bring up Steals and Deals, and I'm not going to stop now. So Steals and Deals is our longest running franchise on Today. We've been doing it for 11 years. It's with Jill Martin. There are 5-6 products that are deeply discounted, 50% off or greater. The sale is live for anywhere between like 36 to 69 hours specifically. And we've been doing this for a really long time. We started monetizing it in 2018, and when we did, there were all sorts of issues. We were driving out to different retailers' websites. We were crashing websites left and right. People were calling us. Our audience was mad. Retailers were mad. Everybody was angry. We decided, to take this in-house, and now we are like the merchant of record for Steals and Deals. We have a homegrown solution that powers the site. And so we host everything on our site, and it's given us a lot of opportunity to, experiment with email marketing, SMS, again, notifications, QR codes on broadcast, things like that. And Steals and Deals can sell 20,000, 30,000 products in 5 minutes. It's crazy. Wow. It's like really, truly insane. So I think, that like kind of hyper flash sales with big reach for us has been really successful.
Amazing.
Yeah, mine is far less sexy than Jen's.
It's pretty. I mean, it's pretty.
Broadcast,
it's awesome. I think the one that jumps to mind is, because it's very recent too, but our Memorial Day coverage just a couple of weeks ago. So for us, we've really been trying to figure out, where are the tent poles where we should go all in, and where are the ones that we should maybe, dial back a little bit. We know that things like, Father's Day, Valentine's Day don't actually perform that well for us.
Interesting.
But things like Memorial Day, President's Day, Labor Day do incredibly well. And so this past year we saw, 200% growth year over year in terms of commissions. And what that looked like was basically a round-the-clock team, working over those 4 days over Memorial Day weekend. We have coverage from everything from editorial to data to partnerships to SEO to really make sure that, during every shift, we are optimizing our content and really thinking about, how we can perform at the top. And the other thing is that we, over time have found that not only does deals content work well for us, but our evergreen content, our buying guides, also do incredibly well during those tentpole events.
I love your buying guides, by the way.
And
a little bit, not objective here, but they're fantastic.
You're talking to 2 other people that have buying guides.
I know. I love your buying guides too.
This was not in the rehearsal.
Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute.
But yes, just leaning into that side of things, adding sales and deals language to the evergreen guides, but really trying to target those people who know what products they want to buy during a tentpole sales event, but they just want the best possible option for that.
Interesting, Chris?
Yeah, I think for us, we've seen a little bit of it's not a decline, but it's not growing as rapidly on the impulse buy stuff. So it's a little bit opposite of what they're seeing. Our tentpole deal stuff still perform. Our sort of daily deal coverage has been a little flat. Our flagship buying guide, which is the best right now, is through the roof, like 100% growth year over year. Our standalone reviews, so sort of more of that evergreen sort of long form content is really what Google has been
because it is kind of the opposite of this is like super instant. This is slightly longer over the course of like 24 hours or so, and this is evergreen months ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, it's I always think that we say like the nutritious stuff is working for us right now, right? The long form reviews, either single SKU or the buying guides and compilations, that sort of thing. But I think some macroeconomic things going on. I think
sure.
people aren't necessarily buying things just willy-nilly anymore. So,
yeah.
But I think there's still real intent on whatever you're looking for.
Yeah, I'm sure that sort of the bigger the purchase, the more sort of like people are perhaps a bit hesitant on impulse buys.
Absolutely.
And so on. Right. So now I want to talk to you about display ads. Very interesting topic, one that I've been actually scratching my head over for years now, as I originally come from programmatic and have sort of shifted into affiliates in the last 10 years, I guess. And there's always a bit of a interesting relationship between commerce content, which is consumer first, reader first. You want to have readers focus on what you're telling them. And of course ads, which kind of trying to distract them from reading what you've created so that they can click somewhere else and go buy something else. And we've seen very different attitudes towards that from different publishers. Some publishers just cover their content commerce pages with thousands of ads, and others have opted to do differently. How do you guys see this? So with you, Jen, what display ads and commerce content in your eyes?
No. We took them off in 2017. I started working at NBC, and one of the first things I did was take the ads off of the commerce articles. It was not a very popular ask by any means.
How popular were you in the office with the sales
I know,
team?
nobody liked me. They were like, who is this girl? But we were able to prove, we took look, the number one thing, data rules above all else. If you can use numbers to prove something out, that's the winner. So we did a small test. We took the ads off just a subsection of pages, looked at click-through rates, and saw immediately that the click-through rate, jumped up. And if you've been on like an NBC site, we love the ads. We go a little nuts with the ads. So taking those off of the commerce pages really helped with our click-through rate, and then it just became mandate. So now NBC Select doesn't have ads, CNBC Select doesn't have ads. They're all ad-free. But if you go, one page over to fashion or wherever, it does have ads. So.
I mean, all the more to you for like being able to pull this through like a.
It was not.
Not easy, probably. Chris, I've got actually a quote of yours up in the on the board right there.
January 1st was the best day of my life. Amazing. So I looked at this through two lenses, right? Like the first one is the last couple of years we put a ton of work into getting our core web vitals in a better place for search, and no matter what, we got everything dialed. Except for the ad speed. And the ads were just such a huge drag on our page speed, and page speed at the time was sort of what Google was super focused on.
Yeah, because it affects your SEO performance.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Right?
Yeah, it's a terrible web experience. It's just a terrible experience. And then I looked at it, I'm really trying to evangelize with my team to think, although we are editorial, to think like an e-commerce company, right? Like, and our pages are our products.
Yeah.
And you don't want a bunch of distraction on the page. You want people to either continue reading, go to another story to sort of get more information, or click on an affiliate link. I don't want them to click on a banner that goes someplace completely unrelated. No, we're not winning there. So we took the ads off. Our organic search has gone completely bananas. We're like up 80% in May, year over year.
Wow.
And it's just it's a totally different experience when you go on the site. So, and we've gotten a ton of great feedback.
Yeah. And you think there's a balance to be struck, I believe.
Well, we are not ad-free.
Yeah. I tend to agree, by the way.
Yeah.
It is possible to find balance, potentially.
That's the thing. I don't know that we will ever be completely ad-free.
Yeah.
That being said, I think we are starting to have more and more conversations about how to look at the data and how to run the tests and to prove or disprove the hypothesis that removing ads is going to increase our performance metrics, and not only improve them, but improve them to the extent that we can make up for the revenue that we are losing from the ad side of things. For us, it's that push and pull of, how do we make sure there's not just us winning? Can we make up that gap? And it's slow going. That being said, I think we are closer today than we were this time last year, and so it's baby steps. But these guys are my heroes.
We were talking before about how we go to these meetings, right? And you're like, guys, our RPM is up here.
Yeah.
It's over here. Like,
it's better than
what's your
better than
full
yours.
stack is like here. They're like, you're full of it. That's not true. I'm like,
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
5x your
Yes, it
RPM.
is.
I always tell you.
Yeah.
So, it's obviously a lot of people protecting their jobs and that
For sure.
kind of stuff. So, but it's slowly but surely happening.
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting because Jen's position is it's not great for users, and then also Chris, what you've added is like it's also not great for Google.
Yeah.
To have all these ads, and I think I see a lot of I think a lot of the websites or a lot of the commerce content creators that are super heavy on ads do struggle to get up there in the Google ranks because, well, it's an SEO, it's a big SEO play.
Yeah.
Today more than ever, I think. Maybe 6 years ago would have been easy to get yourself up there in the top 5 SERPs, but now you're fighting against some pretty well-established companies.
Yep.
Yeah, and the everything is so saturated. You really have to pull out all of the stops in order to make your way up there. So you've really got to squeeze the juice.
Yeah, so that's actually a nice segue to the next topic, which is measuring success, or how you guys measure success. You've mentioned RPMs, and that's a really interesting metric. But what is your sort of North Star success metric that you look at in e-commerce at Forbes?
Yeah, so I mean, we are looking at pretty much every metric underneath the sun. We have a twice monthly, what we call lead lag meeting, where we literally run through every single metric and understand, is it up, is it down, how is it pacing towards our model, like what is causing that. That being said, I would say probably the 3 most important metrics for us are going to be conversion rate per page view, EPC, and then RPM. And to Chris's point, RPM is so powerful because you can measure it against many other different areas of the business. Whereas no one else uses EPC. No one else kind of within Forbes is using conversion rate per page view. So being able to use that as an equalizer is really helpful.
How about you, Chris?
Let me first start by saying I use Trackonomics. That is my North Star tool.
This is a good way to start your answer. I approve.
It's about the buying guide.
So I look at it, RPM is telling me what's happening on our pages. EPC is telling me what's happening off of our page, right?
Yeah.
So those are the 2 things I look at the most. I will dig in and look at, on-page CTR, what do the engagement rates look like, all those sorts of things. But those two things, because I want to know if I have a high RPM page with low impressions, how do I get more quality audience to those pages? Can I use research? Can I use newsletters? Can I just make it more front and center? And then, I always use the comparison of like being a jewelry store, right? Like a jewelry store sells bracelets that are $50 and $5,000, right? We're the same way. Like I want to know we have $50 pages, we have $5,000 pages. And so how do we level up these and get more of those, get more traffic to those types of pages? And that's the thing that I've been just preaching, screaming from the mountaintops with my staff to think more like an e-commerce company. It's obviously very sensitive when you have 80 journalists that are fighting back from that, but like you can have that mentality and still stick to your editorial ethics.
Yeah, well, we've seen that a lot. That it's not super easy to try and maintain sort of, I suppose, numerical rigor with content creators and editors and who are just mostly concerned about the content that they write and less about the RPM or the ECPC, right?
Yeah, I think, the same as them. I'm shocked on here that commissions is so high because obviously commissions are important. I mean, that's why we all have jobs, is to drive revenue, but that is not what makes an article and helps you learn so that you can do more of that same kind of article. You want to look at the RPM, you want to look at the earnings per click. We look at everything. We look at page views. We look at page views by traffic source. We look at orders by minute. We, look at basket size, direct orders versus indirect orders, truly everything. Sizes that people order, colors, we are looking at it all.
Average order value, all that kind of stuff,
Yeah, so, but I think the most important, page views and earnings per click probably for us, conversion rate.
That's very interesting. Again, these are all metrics, I think, but that before commerce content became such a big thing and before your organization sort of came in, I think it was much more centered around stuff like net revenue or net commissions or or even CPA or conversion rate. And I think it's funny because these metrics that you're all talking about, these are all not really affiliate metrics like RPM and ECPC. These are metrics that we've borrowed from other industries but have now become mainstream in what we do.
Right, and like traditional web metrics are not as important to us, right? Like obviously you want scale, but everybody else traditionally thinks about only thing they think about is scale, right?
Yeah.
We don't need 1 million page views to succeed, right?
That's
like
right.
If you have a high RPM page or a high EPC page, you need less.
Interesting. Well, I mean, I think we're kind of coming to almost the end. We have one last slide, which is where I ask you, what advice would you give to other publishers who are in commerce content, or, I would say you 6 years ago, because that was a different reality, right? Like, but if you're talking to publishers now who want to double in on commerce content, try and increase or create a viable channel of commerce content, what would be a few tips that you would feel comfortable sharing with them?
Yeah, I have 3
Don't
things.
do it.
Yeah. First is, in general, I think you get out what you put in. I think, for publishers who are just starting out in this space, and there's not many of them left, but there are a couple, it used to be that you could just have your editorial team write more content about products and kind of, watch some pocket money roll in. And I think now, like if you're going to do this, you have to have a dedicated team who is focusing on strategy for this. Dedicated editors, dedicated writers, dedicated SEO people, a dedicated partnerships team. That is really what is going to.
So a lot of money is what you're saying.
Yeah.
If you're gonna get into it, make sure you've got
to invest in it. Yeah. I think the second thing is to get ready to pivot. I think with everything coming down the pipeline, whether that is a Google algorithm change, whether it is AI, whether it is a new shoppable feature on a social media channel, whether it's a commission rate change with a specific brand, things are always changing, and you have to kind of pivot your strategy a little bit there. And then I think the third thing is, unless you have a massive broadcast audience, know that search is going to be your moneymaker. Like that is where the conversion rate is. So while we are all talking about diversifying outside of search, if you're going to be starting this from scratch, invest in that as
search.
A way to drive traffic.
Really good stuff there, Chris.
I would say just be authentic, right? I think I've been an affiliate since 1998, so I'm a little bit of a dinosaur here, but I've seen
OG, that's how we call it.
Full OG. I've seen every single thing that could possibly be done, and everything that is short term ends up being short term. Think about sort of the long term play as much as you can. And honestly, the other thing is be a good partner. I think the relationships that I've built with companies like Trackonomics and Impact and others really have paid off in spade, right? And I know a lot of people that are not good partners, and it's very short-term thinking. So, it's play the long game. That's all I'm saying.
I think authenticity. Know your audience. They're who's going to be shopping from you. So don't write about, for today's show, we don't write about luxury handbags because our audience is not going to buy a luxury handbag. Know your audience, write for them. This is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Maybe when we all started it was a lot easier. Now you need to find your audience, deliver content that they want to see, speak to them, and have everything be very, very rooted in the data. Let the data lead you where you need to go. Don't just write about something because someone from this room emailed about a 40% commission rate.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you very much. I think that's a wrap for us. Thank you for participating, sharing all that knowledge with everyone. It's been amazing reconnecting, by the way. We haven't seen each other in a while. I know you all expected Bryce, but I hope I was a good surprise to you.
You're great.
If you're all wondering about the stats that you saw displayed on the screens, they're from the State of Commerce Content research that we published with DigiDay. And there should be a QR code somewhere here where you should be able to download it from. And thank you very much.
All right, thank you.